Hi friends, it's Grace and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be doing my January wrap-up and talking about every book that I finished last month. So this was a pretty good reading month for me in terms of enjoyment and quality. I did only finish 5 books, which is not bad, but is a little bit on the low end of average for me, I would say. I usually like to be around 6 or 7, but there was a large book that I read in the month of January that does somewhat contribute, but was also one of my favorites. So it's all good, like I said, in terms of quality of reading. But among those 5 books that I finished in January, I came in at around 2,450 pages, and I actually had an average rating of 4.5 because in the month I had 1 4-star read, 3 4.5-star reads, and a 5-star read. So like I was saying, nothing to complain about. And as I often do, I'm just going to organize the books by lowest rated to highest rated. And in this case, the lowest rated was not even a low rating, it was a 4-star. So really, we're only going to have good things to say here. And Maisie wants to join us. So say hello. Okay, so the first book that we have to talk about was a pleasant surprise for me and is not this particular book, but very popular right now. Well, I guess it is this book, it's just that the series has continued on. So that is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, and this is one that I've been putting off for a long time because, to be honest, I was just hoping that this would be the type of book that I could read and have a lot of fun with as like a popcorn read. But on the other side of that, I was also genuinely afraid that I was just going to hate it. And I don't like being the person who is like no fun and criticizing something that is bringing a lot of people joy. I don't want that. I don't want to be that person. So I was nervous about this, but I was like, you know what? It's a new year. I feel like 2025 is going to be a year of a lot of romantasy for me because I'm just in that mood where I have gotten through and/or am currently reading a lot of the bigger fantasy series that I wanted to read and that were on my like long-term goals. And of course, there are still series that I want to get to in the future, but I feel like I'm at that point in my reading career, so to speak, where I can just like branch off and have a little bit more lighter reading, like a little more fun. And that makes it sound like I'm not having fun with the other stuff, which isn't true, but that's just the best way that I can describe it. So I thought that this was the perfect time to pick this up and just take a chance on it. And you probably don't need me to pitch it to you because this is probably the most popular book series in the world right now. But if you, for some reason, just haven't heard what it's about, our main character, Violet, is essentially a daughter of a prominent general in this society, and they are there are people that are fighting a war on their borders against a country that they share like a mountain range border with. And so this is a large part of our main character's life because her mother is like deeply involved with the military, and she has always been brought up at the war college but to be a scribe. However, kind of at the last minute, her mother decides that she is not going to be a scribe. All of the children of General Sorengale must go on to be dragon riders. And dragon riding is the section of the college that is the most dangerous and is supposed to have the kind of highest level of recruits, like the cream of the crop, enter this quadrant of the war college to try and be the height of like the most prestigious kind of segment of the military, if you will, which are the dragon riders. And so she is forced into this path at the last minute, and it's very dangerous. And there is, of course, a man, a boy, a man, I don't know, she's like, I forget how old she is. She's probably like 18, he's probably like 20. So they seem young to me now, but they are kind of already on opposing sides because this guy is the son of one of the leaders of a rebellion that took place some years ago that was put down, but the children of a lot of the prominent figures in that rebellion have been like folded into the military and kind of used as not exactly revenge, but sort of like collateral against their parents' misdeeds towards the country. And so a lot of these children of these figures, and especially Xaden, they kind of already hate Violet for being the daughter of such a prominent military figure who was instrumental in like the downfall of their parents and the downfall of the rebellion. So we kind of have our enemies set up in that sense, and we have the setup for Violet entering this war college, and the whole kind of thing is that you have a high chance of not surviving if you are not strong, if you're not like clever, if you don't like make alliances. And it's honestly fun because like there are things that I could point to that I think don't make sense, and like there definitely are things in here about this, but I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to take it too seriously because this book has like the melodrama of it all, where the stakes are high even when they don't need to be, and like the book, it's sort of like the book is taking itself seriously in a way that allows you to just be entertained by it. Like, it's not winking at the audience, but on some level it knows that this is just like, I don't know, some of it doesn't make sense, but it's just entertaining. So I read this really quickly and it was high entertainment for me, and I gave it 4 stars for that reason, because I'm like, if I'm this sucked in and it's like a page turner, then that's enough for me. Like, I'm not really rating it critically, and so that's where ratings are tough, because I feel like you can just have such different reasonings for giving different ratings to something. Like, it depends on what your expectations are going in, and this basically just met mine in every way, and the only reason that it's not higher than 4 stars is because of those criticisms, but for what I expected Fourth Wing to be, it delivered. Okay, everything else was a 4.5 star this month, except for my 1 5-star that was my favorite. So these 4.5 stars are really in no particular order, since they're all kind of falling into the same category. But the first one that I finished in the month of January was Disappearing Earth by Julia Phillips. And this is an interesting book because it's, I think, maybe marketed a little bit wrong. Like, when I read the synopsis of this, it kind of gives off the impression that it's a thriller, and it kind of gives that impression when you look at Goodreads too. And so I think some of the more middling to negative reviews of this book reflect the fact that people have gone into this expecting a thriller when it's really not one. And I think the reason that it appears that way at first is because Disappearing Earth, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the name of the location. I think it's Kamchatka. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but it is the Kamchatka Peninsula in northeastern Russia. So this takes place in a very isolated location, an isolated peninsula in Russia. And the first and inciting incident of the book is the kidnapping and potential murder of 2 young girls who are like 8 and 11 years old. They're sisters, and they are out walking on the shoreline, kind of near one of the major towns or cities, and they are taken by a man. And it sounds like the book is going to kind of follow the police investigation of the missing girls. It's going to follow the investigation, stuff like that. And it's true, but it's also not true. The part that should really stand out in this synopsis is how it talks about the ramifications on the community of the kidnapping, because that's really what we get. This book is sort of like vignettes. I actually really enjoyed how it was structured, because it takes place over the course of either a year or 13 months. I can't remember, because every chapter is a month and every chapter is a different woman's perspective. So we start with the girls, and then we flip to a different female perspective. They're not all women. Some of them are younger girls. Some of them are teenagers. But we flip to a different perspective of someone who lives in this area, knows about this event, but it's vignettes and sort of like interconnected short stories about each of these women's lives, what they're going through, what their personal problems are, and how the kidnapping has impacted their lives. Or maybe it hasn't really, but they are connected to other people, and we go through quite a few characters, so I guess it's like 12 since we go by months. But I loved I loved the approach and I loved the look at it. I really liked getting into each of these women's minds and their lives, and because I really loved Julia Phillips's writing. I felt like she captured emotion so well. The entire book is kind of melancholy, and it's not thrilling. Like, that's just not what it's built to be. So we do come back around where the main focus does remain on the missing girls and on eventually kind of finding out what happened to them, but it's just not classically structured like that. It's not what you would expect. So it's very much more of a literary fiction. And I was satisfied because I was happy with some of the perspectives and some of the months I enjoyed more than others. But for the most part, I just really liked how we came around and what we learned and the interconnectedness and how it was bringing us back to where we needed to be to wrap up the story, which in my opinion provided a good balance of closure with some questions remaining. So I really liked it, and it was like I mentioned, like a melancholy, quiet, more like subtle type of story. So it's just not, I don't know, it's not what I would call classically appealing to the thriller community, but it is really good if you think that it sounds interesting for what the book actually is. Next up, we have a book that if I was doing spoilers, I could probably say the most about out of any of them, but since it's the fifth book in a series, I'd probably just end up saying the least about it, and that is Midnight Tides by Steven Erikson. So, like I mentioned, book 5 of Malazan, Book of the Fallen. And this is such an interesting one, and Steven Erikson is such an interesting author because 5 books into Malazan, this man is taking us in different directions and different like continents even, and somehow it still works because of the way that he has chosen to tell these stories, that once you kind of get into this, you understand why he has decided to structure things the way that he has because of like reader investment and how things will come together for us and what we will care about and how we will make the connections between things. So Midnight Tides was a very interesting book because it definitely had a different tone from the other Malazan books. It has a lot more what I would call comedy. And the reason that I'm giving Midnight Tides a 4.5 instead of 5 stars is because it's a bizarre combination where some of the humor and comedy in this book between certain people really worked for me. I loved reading it, and these are a few of my new favorite Malazan characters. Some of the other humor, it didn't land at all for me, and I was just wondering about him making these choices, but it still has the same kind of Malazan appeal. Like, it is a book on par with the quality of the rest of the series. It just has some tonal shifts in it. And I would also say that this installment has even more of the exposed brutality of like war and battle. We see some even more like horrific things than we've seen from the series so far. Or maybe not more so, but on a larger scale. And it sort of reveals to us what's possible and what could be in store for the rest of the series, but it's so hard to tell because he could I don't even know. It's not that he won't carry it through, but it's not like you can expect storytelling in a linear fashion necessarily from Steven Erikson. He could just go to a different continent and make you care about characters there because he's that talented. But the climax of this book was, I think it's the day of the month of January where I read by far the most pages, because I was probably like 150 to 170 pages from the end of this book, and I pretty much decided that I had to finish it that day, which is way more molassin than I would normally read in one day, but it was all part of one build up and sequence of events to the end of the book, which was an incredible, like, it was an incredible build up and an incredible conclusion. So I wouldn't say that Midnight Tides is like my favorite of the series so far. It has things that I would consider to be some of my favorite explorations that he's done, but it's not, I don't know, I don't think it dethrones Memories of Ice. I think Memories of Ice remains my favorite so far. But needless to say, I'm really excited to read more Malazan, and I should be continuing at the end of February and into March with The Bone Hunters. Okay, so my third and final 4.5-star read of January was A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. And so this is my first T. Kingfisher novel. I read What Moves the Dead, and I liked that one, but I felt like most novellas, it didn't leave so much of an impression on me, where I remember it being good, but I feel like novellas and stuff that's really, really short, it has to be truly special to leave a lasting impression on me, because I just like to sink into things for a little bit longer. So I was really excited to pick this up, because even though this is still short, it is novel length, and it is a very interesting premise in my opinion. So in A Sorceress Comes to Call, we have our main character Cordelia, who is, she knows that her mother is unusual. Her mother doesn't allow her to close any doors in her house. Her mother has an uncanny horse as her companion, and her mother has the ability to make her obedient for lengths of time. But it doesn't really occur to Cordelia at first when she's younger, until certain events have happened, that her mother is a sorceress, and probably not a very nice sorceress at that. Very manipulative and abusive mother towards Cordelia. Obviously, she doesn't necessarily use those words. I don't know that she understands, because she is very isolated. But Cordelia knows that her mother is not nice. And basically, she is the mistress to a rich man, and when he decides that he doesn't want to be associated with Cordelia's mother anymore, her mother packs them up, takes them to someplace else, and sets her sights on the man of a household who is unmarried and has enough money to essentially support them, while her mother makes plans and designs on how she will get Cordelia to marry rich and essentially set the two of them up for life. But Cordelia is 14 years old. She is a sweet girl. She doesn't want to marry rich. She's not thinking about marriage. She doesn't even know how to behave in polite society, because she's been so isolated her entire life. And when her mother sets her sights on this household, they are very kind people, and they are being manipulated, and they're very genuine, and Cordelia she doesn't want anything bad to happen to them, because they are genuinely very kind people. And so it kind of goes from there, where Cordelia realizes that what her mother is doing is evil, but doesn't really know what she can do about it, but kind of finds herself surrounded by people who might genuinely care about her for the first time in her life. And I adored the characters in this book. Like, I really found myself endeared to them and invested in what was going to happen to them, and I was just eating this book up. And the only reason that it's 4.5 instead of a full 5 stars is because I felt a very sudden kind of lag in the pacing at a certain point, where I thought that the pacing just suddenly got very odd, and it was noticeable to me, and it felt weird. But then nearing the end and nearing the climax, like, I really enjoyed everything about that. So it's just knock off half a star, but I really loved this reading experience, and I would recommend this to a lot of people who like the kind of cozy and dark tones at the same time, because that's something that I really tend to like when it's balanced properly, because the magic in here is quite dark and there is some violence in here. Like it's not a fully cozy read, but in the way of like cozy fantasy and cozy mysteries, I felt like the stakes were perfectly balanced, where it was an insulated story with a smaller number of characters, so the stakes weren't high in terms of like being world ending, but the stakes were high for the people involved. And it had the cozy feeling because it kind of felt like a Jane Austen-esque type household and like type polite society. And I don't know, I loved pretty much everything about it, so I would definitely recommend this. Last but certainly not least, we have my favorite read of the month of January, and the one book that I did give a full 5 stars this month, and that is Swimming in the Dark by Tomasz Jadrowski. And this is a literary fiction book that takes place in 1980s Poland, and we follow our main character, Ludwig, who, yeah, it's from Ludwig's perspective, so his name was very rarely used in the book. So I found it hard to remember at first, but he goes to like a kind of school mandated type camp thing for the summer, and he meets Janusz there, another boy, and they kind of, at first they form like a tentative friendship, but after they kind of get to know each other a little bit, they spend the summer falling in love with each other, in what is a little bit of a toxic relationship, but something that Ludwig has always kind of wanted but has repressed in himself, so is his first real experience with another boy. And the extension of this relationship is that they have a summer isolated together, and when they kind of come back to their real lives and are ready to like graduate and get jobs, and they have to go back to living in communist Poland because that is the state of the country that they live in at the time. And obviously it's not accepted at that time to be openly gay. It might not immediately have consequences for you, but if you were to do something that the party didn't like, they could use that knowledge against you, and that type of thing, where it's kind of like a threat looming over you if you were to openly have a relationship with another man. And they are kind of forced to keep their relationship a secret, and that kind of toxicity remains, where this is the type of relationship that is not open and it's not proud. Ludwig feels very insecure about things. Like Janusz has a group of friends where that would definitely not know that he and Ludwig were together, and they struggle, their relationship struggles, and they kind of have to make decisions about who they want to be and whether they need to part ways and stuff like that, and a lot of interpersonal struggles between the two of them and between other people in their lives. And the story and the setting obviously are very important, they're critical, but what really elevates this book is the writing. His writing is beautiful. I already want to reread this, and I could probably read anything that he put out, because it was so easy to read while also just like simple and beautiful prose is some of my favorite, because it often doesn't need to be over the top in any way at all to be beautiful. And he has this talent of like word choice and capturing emotion and everything that I love. It made me love everything about the book because it was just so stunningly written. So I will personally definitely check out more from this author if he publishes more. I haven't even looked, to be honest, but this was a debut, and it was like definitely shocking that it was a debut just because of how insanely good the writing was. So it was an easy 5-star for me when I finished it. And I would recommend this to anyone who is like remotely interested in literary fiction, because you should just be able to experience this man's writing. So those are the 5 books that I finished in the month of January, and as you can tell from me talking about them, they were all successes for me. It was honestly a phenomenal start to the year, which has been followed up with still good luck in February for the most part. So I hope that we can continue that trend. And I know that every month won't have a 4.5 star average rating, but it would be really nice if it did, because I always love loving what I read. So yeah, with that said, that is it for my January wrap up. Please like this video if you liked it, and let me know what you thought down in the comments below if you feel like it. Subscribe if you would like to see more from me, and as always, I will have my Discord with Ben and other socials linked in the description below. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!